A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my Weird Prompts. I am Herman, and I am joined as always by my brother Corn.
Herman Poppleberry, at your service. We are coming to you today from our home in Jerusalem, and I have to say, it has been a very loud few weeks in this part of the world.
That is an understatement. Usually we are diving into a prompt sent over by our housemate Daniel, but today we are doing things a little bit differently. The production team actually flagged a specific report for us to look at because of how relevant it is to what we are seeing out our windows right now.
It is a deep dive into the numbers, Herman. We are looking at a comparative analysis of Iranian military operations, specifically comparing Operation True Promise 3, which happened back in June of 2025, and the ongoing Operation True Promise 4, which has been unfolding throughout February and now into early March of 2026.
This is all based on a pretty massive open source intelligence dataset. For those who want to look at the raw numbers, you can find them on the GitHub repository maintained by Daniel Rosehill titled Iran-Israel War 2026 Data. But what we want to do today is look past the spreadsheets and understand the evolution of the threat.
Because when you look at these two operations side by side, you realize we are not just seeing more of the same. We are seeing a fundamental shift in how Iran conducts long-range strikes. The learning curve they have climbed in just 9 months is honestly staggering from a technical perspective.
Let us start with the most obvious metric, which is the attack tempo. If you look back at True Promise 3 in mid-2025, the gap between the major waves of missiles and drones was roughly 10.5 hours. In this current operation, True Promise 4, that interval has been cut nearly in half, down to 5.4 hours.
That is a massive logistical leap. People see a missile launch on the news, and they think it is just pushing a button, but the turnaround time between waves tells you everything about their launch infrastructure. To cut that time in half, you need a massive increase in the number of transporter erector launches, or TELs, and you need much more efficient reload cycles.
Right. A TEL is not just a truck. It is a complex piece of hydraulic machinery that has to be positioned, leveled, and calibrated. If they are launching waves every 5 hours, it means they have either doubled their fleet of launchers, or they have moved to a much more aggressive, pre-positioned firing doctrine where they are not even trying to hide the launchers between shots.
It also points to better command and control. Synchronizing hundreds of assets from different launch points across a country the size of Iran is a nightmare. Doing it twice as fast suggests they have automated a lot of the targeting and deconfliction processes. They are moving toward a continuous strike posture rather than a series of discrete events.
And that brings us to what the report calls the drone pivot. This was one of the most surprising findings for me. In 2025, during True Promise 3, the backbone of the Iranian long-range effort was still their heavy ballistic missiles, specifically the EMAD and the Ghadr. Those are big, liquid-fueled missiles that carry a lot of weight but take time to prep.
But in True Promise 4, we have seen a total shift. The Shahed 136 Delta, which is the latest iteration of their one-way attack drone, has become the primary tool. It has effectively replaced the older ballistic missiles as the workhorse of the campaign.
Why do you think that is? Is it purely a cost thing, or is it about the math of saturation?
It is both, but mostly it is about the math of the interceptors. Look, an EMAD missile is expensive for Iran to build, but it is also a very clear target for an Arrow 3 interceptor. When Iran sends a Shahed drone, which costs maybe $20,000 or $30,000, they are forcing Israel and its allies to respond with systems that cost millions. But more importantly, the Shahed is small, it flies low, and it is slow.
That sounds counterintuitive. Why is slow better?
Because it stays in the air longer. If you launch a ballistic missile, it is up and down in 15 minutes. If you launch a swarm of drones, they are cluttering up the radar screens for hours. It forces the defense systems to stay at a high state of alert for a much longer window. It creates a screen of noise that the faster, more dangerous missiles can hide behind.
So the drones are the chaff, essentially. They are the distraction.
And in True Promise 4, the report shows that the ratio of drones to ballistic missiles has increased by 300% compared to last year. They are leaning into the swarm. They are trying to find the breaking point of the fire control computers.
That leads into the geographic expansion, which is probably the most concerning part of this OSINT report. In True Promise 3, the attacks were largely coming from Iran itself, with some limited involvement from the usual suspects in Lebanon and Yemen. It was essentially a direct confrontation.
But the data for Operation True Promise 4 shows launches or transit through 12 different countries. 12. We are talking about a coordination of the entire so-called axis of resistance on a scale we have never seen. We are seeing launches or coordinated flight paths involving Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and even transit corridors through Sudan and the Mediterranean. This is not just Iran firing from its own borders anymore.
It is the Ring of Fire strategy that analysts have been warning about for years, but now it is fully operational. When you have launches coming from every direction, you are no longer defending against a single threat vector. You are defending against a 360-degree perimeter.
And that changes the geometry of the defense. If a missile comes from Iran, you know exactly where to point your high-grade radars. If missiles and drones are coming from 12 different jurisdictions simultaneously, you have to spread your sensor coverage thin. It is much harder to maintain a high interception rate when the threats are coming from every point on the compass.
I want to dig into the flight time compression mentioned in the report. This gets a bit technical, but it is crucial. Even though they are using more slow drones, the actual ballistic missiles they are using are getting much, much faster.
Right. They are moving away from those older liquid-fueled missiles and moving towards solid fuel systems like the Khyber-Shekin and the Fatah. Solid fuel is a game changer because you do not have to fuel the missile on the launch pad. It is like a giant bottle rocket. You can keep it in a silo or a cave, drive it out, and fire it in minutes.
And the report mentions a significant increase in the use of MARVS and HGVS. Can you break those down for the listeners?
Sure. An MARV is a maneuverable re-entry vehicle. Traditionally, a ballistic missile follows a predictable arc, like a thrown baseball. If you know the speed and the angle, you can calculate exactly where it will be and hit it with an interceptor. An MARV has small fins or thrusters that allow it to change direction as it comes back into the atmosphere. It zigzags,
Which makes it a nightmare for an interceptor like the David Sling or the Patriot.
precisely. And then you have HGVS or hypersonic glide vehicles. These are even more advanced. Instead of coming down in the steep arc, they stay high in the atmosphere and glide at 5 times the speed of sound. They stay above the range of traditional air defenses like the Iron Dome, but below the range of space-based interceptors like the Arrow 3.
So they are finding the gaps in the layers. It is like they are looking at the Israeli defensive architecture and building missiles specifically to fly through the seams between the different systems.
That is exactly what the data shows. In True Promise 3, most of the Iranian missiles were intercepted in what we call exo-atmospheric space, meaning they were hit while they were still outside the atmosphere. But in True Promise 4, we are seeing a much higher percentage of engagements happening in the lower atmosphere. That means the missiles are getting closer to their targets before they are being engaged.
Which reduces the margin for error to almost zero. If you miss a missile in space, you might have another chance to hit it as it comes down. If you are engaging it at 50,000 feet while it is moving at Mach 5, you only get one shot.
And the debris from that interception is going to fall on a populated area. This is a deliberate shift in Iranian doctrine. They know they cannot easily beat the Arrow 3, so they are trying to bypass it entirely by using these maneuverable lower altitude flight paths.
It is a classic cat and mouse game, but the mouse is getting much more sophisticated. We should probably take a second to remind everyone that we are talking about this from our perspective here in Jerusalem. We have spent a lot of time in bomb shelters lately, and you can really feel the difference in the intensity of these waves.
You can. The sirens used to go off, you would wait 10 minutes, hear a few booms, and it was over. Now the alerts are rolling. They last for an hour or more because the waves are so synchronized, and the flight paths are so varied.
We should also mention that this analysis is based on open source data. While the report is incredibly detailed, It is an AI-generated synthesis of available information, so we have to treat the specific numbers with a bit of caution. But the trends are unmistakable.
The trends are what matter. Even if the exact count of drones is off by a few, the pivot from ballistic missiles to drones and the compression of the attack tempo are verifiable through multiple sources. It shows an Iranian military that is treating these operations as a massive laboratory. They are testing, they are iterating, and they are learning from every single launch.
That is a chilling thought. They are essentially running a live-fire diagnostic test on the most sophisticated air defense network in the world. Every time a missile is intercepted, they get data on how the Israeli radars behaved, what frequencies they used, and how the interceptors maneuvered.
And they are using that data to program the next wave. That is why we are seeing such a rapid evolution from True Promise 3 to True Promise 4. They are not just firing blindly, they are probing for weaknesses.
One of the things that stood out to me in the Doctrine section of the report was the concept of strategic depth. Iran is using its proxies to create a sort of artificial strategic depth. They are launching from so many different places that it makes it very difficult for Israel to strike back at the source without starting a dozen different wars at once.
It is a very clever, if cynical, way of leveraging regional instability. By involving 12 countries, they are making any retaliatory strike a diplomatic nightmare. If a drone comes from an Iraqi militia group, does Israel strike the militia, or do they strike Baghdad? If it comes from Yemen, they have to fly across the Red Sea. It is designed to paralyze the decision-making process through complexity.
And it highlights why the American role in this is so vital. We have seen the U.S. Navy and the Air Force doing a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of regional interceptions. Without that coalition, the sheer geographic spread of True Promise 4 would be overwhelming.
This is where the political reality hits the military data. From a conservative perspective, this is exactly why we need a strong, unambiguous American presence in the Middle East. Deterrence only works if the other side believes you have the will and the capability to dismantle their entire launch infrastructure. If Iran feels they can expand their operations to 12 countries without a decisive response, they will keep expanding.
It is about showing that the cost of these operations outweighs the data they are gaining. Right now, Iran clearly feels that the intelligence and the pressure they are generating is worth the price of the hardware they are losing.
We also have to look at the economic side of this, which the report touches on. Israel is spending billions on interceptors. Iran is spending millions on drones. That is an asymmetric economic war. Even if every single drone is shot down, Iran might still consider it a victory if they are draining the Israeli treasury and the U.S. stockpile of interceptors.
That is why the development of laser-based defense systems like the Iron Beam is so critical. We have seen some reports of laser interceptions during True Promise 4, and that changes the math entirely. A laser shot costs a few dollars, not a few million.
If the Iron Beam can be scaled up to handle the volume of drones we are seeing in these latest reports, the Iranian drone pivot might actually backfire, but we are not there yet. For now, the Shahed 136 is still a very effective tool for economic attrition.
Let us talk about what this means for the future. If the trend continues from True Promise 4 into whatever comes next, what should we be looking for?
I think we will see even more automation. We are already seeing evidence of AI being used in drone swarms to allow them to communicate with each other. Imagine a swarm where, if one drone is shot down, the others automatically adjust their flight paths to fill the gap.
That is the stuff of science fiction, but we are seeing the foundations of it in this OSINT data. The synchronicity of the launches is the first step toward that kind of autonomous swarm behavior.
And we will likely see more integration of the hypersonic glide vehicles. Right now, they are the exception, the silver bullets. But as Iran refines its production, they could become a much larger part of the mix. If they can launch 100 drones and 10 hypersonics at the same time, that is a problem that no current defense system is fully equipped to solve.
It really underscores the need for constant innovation on our side. You cannot just build a wall and hope it stays up. The wall has to be smarter and faster than the hammer that is hitting it.
It is also worth noting how much this conflict has changed since the 12-day war we talked about back in episode 692. Back then, the algorithms were just starting to redefine combat. Now, the algorithms are the combat. Everything from the launch timing to the interception trajectory is being calculated by machines in milliseconds.
It is a high-speed chess game where the pieces are moving at 5 times the speed of sound.
One other thing from the report that I found fascinating was the change in launch locations within Iran itself. They are moving away from fixed bases and toward highly mobile, concealed launch sites in the mountains. This makes it almost impossible to do preemptive strikes. You cannot hit what you cannot find, and if they can set up and fire in under 30 minutes, the window for a preemptive strike is basically closed.
That is the solid fuel advantage again. It gives them a level of agility that they just did not have 5 years ago.
And it means that the defense has to be entirely reactive. You have to wait for the launch and then deal with the threat in the air. That puts all the pressure on the interception network.
So, if we are looking at takeaways for our listeners, what is the big picture here?
The big picture is that the threat is evolving faster than the public discourse suggests. People talk about Iranian missiles like they are the same Scuds from the 1990s. They are not. We are looking at a modern, tech-savvy military power that is rapidly iterating its doctrine based on real-world data.
And the geographic expansion means this is no longer a localized issue. It is a regional war that involves the airspace and the sovereignty of a dozen nations. The international community needs to wake up to the fact that the old containment strategies are not working against this new, distributed model of warfare.
For our listeners who follow the technical side of things, I highly recommend looking at the flight path data in that GitHub repository. It shows just how much effort Iran is putting into terrain, masking and using the geography of the region to hide their drones from radar for as long as possible.
It is a reminder that even in the age of satellites and advanced sensors, the physical world still matters. Using a mountain range to hide a drone's radar signature is a low-tech solution to a high-tech problem, and it works.
It also highlights the importance of open-source intelligence. The fact that we can have this level of discussion based on publicly available data is incredible. It allows for a level of transparency and analysis that used to be reserved for government intelligence agencies.
Though, as we always say, with great data comes great responsibility to verify it. We are seeing a lot of information warfare alongside the actual missiles.
Definitely. But the patterns in True Promise 4 are too consistent to be ignored. The tempo, the pivot, and the expansion are all there in the numbers.
Well, this has been a pretty heavy episode, but I think it is important to understand the mechanics of what is happening around us. It is not just chaos, it is a very calculated, very deliberate military evolution.
It is. And as someone living in the middle of it, I have a lot of respect for the engineers on both sides who are pushing the boundaries of what is possible, even if the context is a tragic one. The level of technical achievement in these interception networks is nothing short of a miracle.
It really is. Every time you see that flash in the sky and realize a missile was stopped, you are seeing the result of decades of brilliant engineering and billions of dollars in investment. It is the only reason we are able to sit here and have this conversation today.
Very true. We should probably start wrapping this up. It has been a long one, but there was a lot of ground to cover.
Before we go, I want to remind everyone that if you are finding these deep dives helpful, please leave us a review on your podcast app or on Spotify. It really does help the show reach more people who are looking for this kind of technical analysis.
Yeah, we appreciate all the support we have been getting lately. It has been a wild ride reaching episode 930, and we are not slowing down.
You can find all our past episodes, including the ones we mentioned today, at our website, myweirdprompts.com. We have a full archive there and a contact form if you want to reach out.
And a big thanks to our production team for flagging this report for us today. It was a fascinating, if sobering, look at the current state of modern warfare.
We will be back soon with more prompts and more deep dives. Until then, stay safe out there.
This has been My Weird Prompts. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to